and as promised, a very special guest. We had him on before the election. You loved him, and so we had to have him back to help make sense of all that's happened the last 10 days since Election Day. State Representative Vernon Jones from Georgia, the Democrat who dared to support Donald Trump, joins us again. Representative, good to have you on the show again.
Thank you, John, for having me. I wasn't sure if you liked me enough. It took you long enough to get me back on here.
Oh, we
But
loved
I've
you.
been
Trust me.
busy
And
too.
more importantly, our listeners and viewers loved you. That's all that mattered. So that's great. Well,
Yeah.
we're so honored to have you on. So help us understand what we're going through in this country right now. Let's start with your home state of Georgia. What's the latest? What do you make of Georgia right now?
Well, John, let me tell you, there's a couple things happening here. But right quick, first of all, there's litigation moving forward. We've hired Lynn Wood, who
Right. Yeah. Tremendous
who
lawyer.
handled the
Right.
young man's case. Yeah, he is amazing. So he's following through the lawsuit. At the same time, there's been pressure on the Secretary of State to have this recount. So he's announced yesterday there will be a recount. It takes about 5 days. And I mean, it's going to be a hand count recount,
Old
John,
fashioned.
if you will. Yes. And so when you talk about 5 million ballots cast, and when you look at you have 159 counties in Georgia, everybody at the local level will be doing the recount. And John, I think one of the biggest things that people are more concerned about than anything else was those mail-in ballots. And as you know, that's what the president talked about, and that's where the exposure is on a lot of this election fraud. And I call it election fraud versus voter fraud. The Democrats want to say there's no voter fraud, and when somebody votes and they're dead, that's election fraud. Right. All right. And so when you look at ballots haven't been signed, when you look at even their signatures, where these machines are with software, that's another thing that's being looked at, the software and the hardware. And these machines, do they recognize signatures? So there's enough there, John, to really move forward with addressing these concerns. The voters should be, and they are concerned about it. Here's what I don't understand. The Democrats always talk about a free and transparent election. Who complained more about voter fraud than Stacey Abrams and her group? And so here they are. The Democrats do not want us to count these ballots again. The election is close. The irony of the hypocrisy of it, John.
Yeah, it's remarkable how the tables were turned from 2018 when so many of the Democrats were yelling foul to today. What do you make of the turnout? I mean, you've been in this state and in politics for 30 years, been at the top of service, and you know how the state operates. We know the president turned out his vote. How did so much Democrat vote turn out? And are you confident that there's real, when we say election fraud, people who did not vote that are listed as voted? Do you think there are shadow votes, dead voters? How confident are you that there's a substantial number of bad votes in this election?
John, if you go back and look at this carefully, who have been pushing from day one on mail-in ballots? It's been the Democrats. Right. It's been Stacey Abrams and her group Unfair Fight. That's the biggest exposure in this election, those mail-in ballots. Now, when you break that down with 5 million votes and a difference of 12,000, the president's people came there that day and voted that day. That day of the election, it shouldn't be that much still of a difference between election day and early voting. And I tell you why, or let's say mail-in ballots, because many people who were scared by the pandemic, although it's serious, don't get me wrong. A lot of seniors and others, and not necessarily those who are frail seniors, but a lot of those well seniors who felt like, okay, I think I'm going to send my ballot in. I'll vote through the mail-in ballot. Well, it's strange. I think you should have had a lot higher number for the president in those ballots. So either the election was about even Steve with those mail-in ballots, or there was an emphasis so much on mail-in ballots where they were ballot harvesting. Right. And I think that's where the issue, and that's what the president spoke about.
And let's be clear, in Georgia, ballot harvesting is illegal, right? It's not appropriate for people to come and round up people's votes for them, right?
Right. Right, it's illegal.
Have you found any evidence of it? I mean, you have great intelligence on the ground. You know the people, the streets, the incredible activists in the state. Do you see any sign of ballot harvesting? Have you detected anyone that said, "Yeah, my ballot was harvested"?
John, the emails that I received and the phone calls that I received, that's just me as a legislator. It's across the board. We're seeing irregularities across the board. I know how some try to narrow in. Well, give me specific evidence here. Well, for example, which is within the whole rim, the largest precinct in the state of Georgia, in Fulton
Right.
County,
Atlanta area. Yep.
in the Atlanta area, when poll watchers, who by law they can be there, when poll watchers were told that we're through counting ballots right now, we're tired, staff is tired, we're going to let everybody go home, the poll watchers leave, they lock the door, and they count for another 3
Wow.
hours. And there's a local media outlet here that agreed and was there when they were put
Right.
out. And so when you look at this thing in totality, that's why I talk about election fraud. There were just so many different things going on. But I believe with that recount, I believe that certainly would swing in the president's favor, because I believe a lot of those ballots will be thrown out. And as those ballots are thrown out, I think that favors the president without a doubt.
Wow. Do you have any sense that any state law enforcement agencies, like the State Bureau of Investigations, whether any police agencies are looking at matters in Atlanta? We know the Secretary of State started the recount. We know there are civil matters, but any sense that any criminal investigations are underway in the Georgia area?
You know what? That's what many of us are kind of concerned about, the Attorney General, Chris
Right.
Carr. You know, is he so concerned about the election 2022, where he's up for re-election, that he's not coming out making a bold stand? Matter of fact, have you heard anything from him? That's sort of
Yeah, he's
ironic.
been
You haven't
very
heard anything
quiet.
from
Yeah.
the attorney. Been very quiet. Something's there. Again, either they're that afraid of their election, don't want to stand up for what's right, but they don't know if they don't stand up today, the same thing can happen to them
Sure.
in 2022 when they're up for re-election. And so, you know, John, it takes people with courage to stand up for what is right. And the AG is standing up for every voter, not just Republicans, but Democrats too. The AG should have been the first one out. And as a matter of fact, the Secretary of State was called out by the 2 U.S. senators, and they basically said, look, you're not doing your job. You really failed overall, and you should resign. And so, John, you know this thing. You know how it is. When the shoe is on the other foot, then they want to make noise. But right now, they're looking at I believe, their election in 2022. And by the way, let's be clear about something, John. No blue wave came through Georgia.
Yeah.
When you look at the
Or the
Georgia
country.
legislature, where was across the
Yeah.
country? Maybe a water gun, but no blue wave.
Right. Yeah, no, there's no doubt. Listen, the Republicans have picked up seats in the House, and President Trump, outperformed the polls by a factor of many. There's no doubt. In fact, one could argue that the left side of the party was actually rebuked in some way, even though Joe Biden's in the lead right now in these states. The many of these districts that were swing districts, they swung back to Republicans, which has to send a message to the Democratic Party. I know you've been delivering that message of not getting too far away from the base. That's what made you such a successful Democratic state representative for so long. What happens to both parties now? You look at the Republican Party, there's this influx of new voters, right? Blue-collar voters, minority voters, first-time voters. You've got on the Democratic side a little bit of a departure of traditional African-American, Hispanic voters. Certainly in the South we saw it. Do you think both parties are reevaluating their opportunities going into 2022? And what do you think the lessons for each party are from this election?
Well, John, that's a good question. And again, I'm still a little concerned. How can across the country pick up House seats, or Republicans pick up House seats, and the legislatures remain the same, but the president losing some of those states? There's something to that specifically to the president. Now, with that being said, I think the Democrats realize, and you heard I think the majority leader or maybe the majority whip say that we have to stop talking about defunding the police. We have to stop talking about socialism. As a matter of fact, one Congress lady who lost, she made it clear to them that rhetoric
that's what cost
her election. It cost her the race. And so they're looking at, hey, AOC and those others have hijacked the Democratic Party. They're taking them in the wrong direction, and it's going to cost them even more. This was a warning, a significant warning. Now, with that being said, the Republican Party is looking at, well, wait a minute. President Trump brought us some votes over that we never had before. He put he laid it out there. He didn't just say, oh, we're going to pursue African American support or minority support. He put his money, his machine, his time, and effort behind it, including his agenda. And more importantly, John, he has a track record on what he's done for minorities. The Republicans are going to have to get on board. And I think they will. They see the game plan. But, John, they have to beat the Republicans. Beat the Democrats to the starting line on true legislation using Tim Scott and others. You've done a good job addressing prison reform. That president's platinum plan, the Republican Party should embrace that. Let the Senate bring a bill out of there and send it to the House. Let the House turn it down. See if they'll turn down a bill that's going to take away from support of African Americans and other minorities.
You've been a big champion of that. You see that really resonating with everyday people, don't you? The platinum plan.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Because, John, the thing about it, the platinum plan, the reason why they have it right, it's about job creation through creating small businesses. Most jobs come through small businesses. Right. And you can grow yourself out of this deficit. You can grow yourself by starting and expanding businesses, creating jobs, and let us grow our way out versus cutting taxes, hurting businesses. You want to raise the minimum wage. These small businesses can't afford it, certainly since the COVID has hit them. And you want to talk about raising taxes on them and cutting the president's tax cuts out. That doesn't make any sense, and that's going to hurt the Democrats too.
Yeah, no, that's you can see it, and you're seeing already. Even though Donald Trump's tax cuts reduce the burden on many people in America, in the states where they just ramped up the local city and local state taxes, California, New York, you're seeing this enormous flight of residents and citizens from other states. If you're a Democrat, you have to look at that agenda and say, I'm losing people because of that agenda. Why do you think that the Democratic Party hasn't taken that message? It doesn't see the threat. I mean, New York and California are two states that are, bleeding residents and citizens by large numbers. Is there someone in the Democratic Party that must be saying, "Wake up! What are we doing?"
You know what? I love California. I love New York. But if you're moving now to New York and California, you must not be used to paying any taxes. All right. And so young people may be going there because they haven't been homeowners yet. But those are leaving like, wait a minute, you're taxing me. My community is not getting any better. You're defunding police. The infrastructure is not getting any better. You're opening the borders to illegals. When those money, and by the way, I support immigration, but we have to do it in a way that's reasonable and with the process. But John, that is not playing well with Democrats who are having to leave. And it's kind of interesting. We're saying to those Democrats, if you're going to move to where we are, then don't come and try to change us and make us like where you came from, because we'll be right back where we were. I heard that Andrew Yang, is he a California resident or New York? I heard him recently say he was going to move to Georgia.
Yeah. Oh, Andrew Yang,
and be a part of
former presidential candidate.
Yeah, he's probably coming because Georgia's the best place to do business. Georgia's taxes are low. Georgia is fiscally responsible and fiscally sound. And so he's trying to hide, I guess, behind, he wants to come down and help these liberals get elected. But that's what have these other states screwed up because they've gone so far without fiscal responsibility. Again, not supporting law enforcement. And John, I know we're going on and you just stop me when you want to, but I'm so excited about how some of this is turning around. Think about Minneapolis. When they wanted to reduce, and they reduced law enforcement budget. Now here's a police chief saying, hey, we don't have enough officers. We need $500 million and to bring officers in from out of state. And even when it came out of committee, it was 7-6 when it came out of committee.
It's crazy.
All those going to full body. So, it just showed that their policies has just been off beat. They just not for the American people.
Yeah, there's so much interesting dynamics going on. And I think the American people are starting to speak with an increasing voice. It'll be interesting as you look at Joe Biden, who I think historically has been a moderate and viewed by his party as a moderate. And then he has all of these activist left-wing people he's going to be facing, Bernie Sanders and AOC and Tlaib and Omar and some of the new young guns and the media. Is the bigger war going to be between Democrats and Republicans or between two different types of Democrats inside the Democratic Party?
Well, when I hear about those various senators talking about going over and working in administration, first of all, they have a boss to answer to. Right. There's going to be a conflict there. They're not going to last long there anyhow.
They used to be in their own boss, right?
Right. And a lot of them, only thing they ever run was their mouths. And so you're going to see a split there, obviously, because the policy they want to push does not line up with American people. And Joe Biden, I think, and I like him as a person, but when you look at who his vice president is, she's coming from California. How can you have someone like that a heartbeat away from the nation, and feel safe if you're American, worried about her leftist views and what they've done to California? And so I don't think Joe Biden. I think the Democratic Party is out of control, starting with Nancy Pelosi when she let AOC and those others come in and start controlling. The men basically ate the fish over there. They're the ones who's controlling that House body with the agenda. And it's not good for the American people. We're not a socialist country. Ask people from Venezuela that's here and other
They know.
countries where socialism just does not
Yeah,
work.
no, they experienced it firsthand. It's a theory to a lot of these young people who got indoctrinated by their college professors, but those who lived under communist and socialist regimes know exactly what the experience is and what the end result is, which is loss of freedom, loss of economy.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable that there's so many young people in this country that think socialism or communism is viable. It's really stunning to me.
Well, it's kind of interesting, John. People like you and me, when we were growing up, we were taught to work, hard work.
Absolutely.
We wanted a job, we want extra money. They didn't give it to us. We get a paper
Yeah.
route, or you sell vegetables or whatever. But the younger people now, you're right. They don't have. There's no push for them to do hard work or earn their own. They want something
Yeah,
given to them.
entitlement.
And when you hear entitlements, and liberal colleges, they are only hearing about this socialism from liberal colleges because they don't let people like you and me come on there who have a difference of opinion. And so they come out of college with that background, thinking that everything should be free. And it's just, it's sad.
Yeah, no, you're so right about the dynamic. When you look back now, I mean, obviously this year you experienced a lot of rejection from your own party despite your loyalty, your success, your extraordinary service to your constituents, which has never been in question. Is there room for a Vernon Jones in the Democratic Party going forward?
Well, John, sometimes you can be ahead of your time. And sometimes you have to wait until time is on your
Right?
history. But one courageous man in the crowd is a majority. And what I'm saying, they know what I'm saying
Yeah,
is right, but they prefer to let a D or R make up their decision in terms of what I'm saying is right or wrong, and not, what I'm in reality. What I'm saying is what's best for the American people. Trump has opened that door. He has gotten more minority participation than any Republican president in the past 50 years. Here's how I helped, if anything, I helped the Democratic Party, John. They refuse in that party to stand up. African Americans stand up and say, wait a minute, we've been your most loyal block of
right.
voters. You come after us in the primary, but then in the general election, you think we're a captive audience and you don't need to come out and earn our vote anymore. And so we're just going to come in naturally, vote for you. And Joe Biden was right to a certain extent. If you don't vote for him, you ain't black. Well, because that's been the voting
Yeah,
history of African Americans. But we're opening up. There are people like myself and others who realize, wait a minute, this is not the Democratic Party that my dad may have been
that's right.
supportive of with his fiscal conservative ideas and family values and protecting the First and the Second Amendment, supporting law enforcement. This is not that party anymore. So I think right now you're going to see more and more blacks not only become Republicans, get elected as
Right.
Republicans. Burgess Owens coming out of California, out of
Utah.
Utah now. I understand he's still in the
Right.
lead, African American, and but it's not about color, John. It shouldn't be about
No.
color. But liberals have made it about color,
Principles and
and they've
values, right?
painted
That's what should
Republicans
matter.
as being bad. Yeah, yeah. And so yes, it's going to change. And what I've had to go through in order to be that literally be that bee that stung the ox. In other words, Joe Biden now wants to talk about what he wants to do for black colleges. He wants to talk about what he wants to do for prison reform. He wants to talk about what he wants to do for black businesses. In 47 years, he hasn't talked about
Right.
that. So that shows that they've done more in the past, I'd say, John, 3 months to earn the African American vote than they ever have. But it's too late now because many of us are just becoming woke. And no longer will you take our vote for granted. And you're going to start to see that it's starting to increase. You see the trend
Right.
now. More and more blacks are becoming more
So you
independent.
don't think that Donald Trump's an aberration in this election, but that there's an actual trend starting here towards the Republican Party? Who besides Donald Trump? Obviously, you were squarely behind him and really made an eloquent case for why you chose to support him. Who are some of the other Republicans that can pick up the Trump mantle, this reach across the aisle and recognize the blue collar voices of America, the African American community, the Hispanic community, have more in common with the Republican parties that Democrats have led on? Who carries that agenda forward? Who else can expand that and evangelize that message?
Well, when I think about that, I think about Senator Tim
Right,
Scott at the forefront in a Republican state, southern
right.
state. And it's kind of ironic, though, that in the Senate, you had one African American Republican and two African American Democrats. But the difference is 95% of the African American vote has been going to Democrats. And why haven't Democrats, white Democrats, recruited and supported African
Yeah.
Americans to run for U.S. Senate? It happened to me when I ran for United States Senate, John, in
Eight, right,
2008,
yeah.
just coming out as being county exec. Won the majority of the primary with 44%, but Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer, I was not their candidate. No support from Washington. Why? Because they wanted, and matter of fact, the guy they supported was a very liberal leftist who had just lost the election. I had 44%. He had 32,
Unreal.
but they didn't want to support my campaign. Why? Because they didn't want African Americans to be in those positions because they feel like they would get left behind if African Americans got elected with agenda like mine in terms of conservative values.
Right.
And not that I'm a nutcase, John, but I'm reasonable. We should work across the aisle. And black people want to run as Republicans or listen to Republicans. They get demonized by the liberals hiring those agent provocateurs to attack them, including the media. So it's kind of interesting. Why should I get attacked because I happen to support President
Yeah.
Trump? Why should I? But his policies make sense. But African Americans have been in that mindset, John, for the past 60 years. And liberals have kept them there. When Joe Biden stands in front of a black congregation and says, well, if you vote Republicans, they're going to put you back in chains. Well, first of all, none of them have been in chains. Then when you
Yeah,
see
been generations. Yeah.
Hillary Clinton goes and do the same thing and starts trying to play black, I guess. I ain't feeling no ways tired in the black church. Those are dog whistles,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Those are
Yeah.
dog whistles.
Someone fed him a
And
line.
the media, John, don't forget, the mainstream media, the CNN will not have me on their show. Why? Because I'm not a black that's on there talking about Donald Trump being a
Right.
racist. I'm a black on there saying that Joe Biden is the bigot, and I don't fit their narrative. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people of color watch CNN, MSNBC, and they're getting fed that day in and day out. But Fox and others like yours, you're starting to see that black audience shift over, John. And so that's why I'm glad you're here
Oh,
because
thank
you
you.
understand all this, and you're open to who you bring on your
Yeah,
show.
no, we should. The greatest thing in America is the extraordinary diversity that we have, and right now it seems like the media has to put everybody just in one category. And most people aren't cookie
Yeah,
cutters. Or almost all of us aren't
yeah,
cookie cutters. We think for ourselves, and the media and the
yeah.
parties and the elites want us to just fall into one or two categories. And I think that that's where the real opportunity is. Do you see the potential for a viable, and when I mean viable, I mean something that could capture a majority third party in America, or is it just too hard to create a third party with the D's and R's and all of their advantages?
I think people are, John, to a certain degree, getting disgusted with both
Yeah,
parties, and there are people who want, to be a part of a party that's reasonable, that's rational, that believe in bipartisan efforts. Bob Johnson, founder of BET,
right.
he made a
He
comment.
did
He thought
recently.
there should
Yeah,
be a black party, so Democrats won't take their vote for
yeah.
granted, and Republicans realize how important it is. It can make a difference in the election, and they'll do more to earn their vote. So, um, you know, I don't think anytime soon you'll see that. But John, I never thought that we'd be in a day where we're defunding police departments either. I
It's
never thought
true.
it'd be a day when
Yeah.
we're burning churches, and the media cares more about the person who's holding up a Bible in front of the church than the church that just got burned down. It's crazy, John.
It is, and the amazing thing is the American people see it. The elites are still reveling in it, but the American people see that's not where they want to go, and it's
Yeah,
going to be
yeah,
interesting to watch the next year, to watch the populists, which I think they will impose their will and let the American elitists know, hey, we're still in charge in this country. What's next for you? You've had such a profound effect, and you've opened so many people's minds. You're eloquent. You go across the country and you inspire people to think for themselves and not just take dogma or dogmatic instruction from party elites. What do you do next?
Well, John, I'm not running
Right.
again. As I mentioned to you earlier, I'm leaving the
Yeah.
field, but I'm not leaving the stadium.
That's good.
I lost my I lost my mom and my
Yeah.
brother about 7 months
Mm,
apart this past year,
so
and
sorry.
I do need some time off. But John, I also I have I'm getting ready to roll out my nonprofit organization that's based on conservative
Right.
values and preserving our way of life, the American way of life. It's called WakingUpAmerica.us, and I want to use it as a platform to interface and interact with you and talk about what we're doing. Go to college campuses and let people know that there are choices. These historical black colleges, there are 48 of
Right.
them.
Yeah.
That in itself is a pond to fish
Yeah. It's
in,
an
and just to
amazing
be
resource
there
and
to
amazing.
educate and
They're
open
amazing
minds.
communities. I mean, we're blessed in Washington to have Howard, but wherever you go, Grambling, Howard, I mean, they're just such amazing, vibrant communities, and they've been
Yeah.
taken for granted, quite frankly, by both parties for a long time. But there's got to be a great dialogue to be had on those campuses.
Well, John, first of all, I'm gonna start at my alma mater, North Carolina Central
Absolutely
University,
right.
so which is HBCU. But John, that and speaking across the country, and just again continue to get people woke. But you know, as a politician, I know what I know how they act, I know where they eat, I know how they walk, and so I think I would have something to contribute to organizations like yours when you're having people on and talking about the process that, from a bipartisan standpoint, put the country before the party, but just not to have so much of the rhetoric going
Yeah.
on, but truth.
Honest conversation, right?
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, good conversation, and so that's a possibility. There's been some conversations about that, and so last time I decided really what I was going to do, God laughed at me. So I know now just to pray
you,
and tell him my
you,
heart's desire, and
you want
then
to make sure he's
just let
on
His
board,
will
huh?
be done.
That's
You understand, John?
absolutely. There's nothing like
But I'll
divine
always remain
providence
a big
to
fan of
guide us.
yours, though.
Well, sir, it is an honor to always have you on the show. We're going to have you on more and more often. I love the conversation. I think there's a fruitful
Thank you.
conversation in America. We got to open up people's minds to being less hateful
Yeah,
and spiteful, and to
yeah,
maybe consider each
yeah,
other's ideas more. And I think you're one of those people
yeah.
who can make that happen. So,
Well, John, you've taken a lot of heat too,
yeah,
and I want to say this. And the days of Walter Cronkite is just
yeah.
over.
Sadly, they are.
Um, but for you to be able, you were at the forefront of the whole deep state investigation. When others laughed, when
Yeah,
others poked fun, when others didn't want to look into it, when they didn't care because it wasn't their candidate, they pushed these fake
right.
narratives: Russia, 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 Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. But I would watch you when you were at the Hill. Then I saw you more on Sean Hannity. Then I saw that progression. But you would bring out information that there's just no way that information should not have been all across the
Yeah,
networks, but they just refused to. And so, regardless of what you went through, you stood up for what you believe was right. You were one of those courageous men in the
thank you.
crowd that was the majority. And I hope that journalists tune in. And I tell anybody, if you want to know truth, look. Let's read what John Solomon
Thank
says.
you. That's very
Look at his
kind.
reports, his information. Because John, you just call balls and strikes like me. That's
Yeah, we
all, and
just
I can
stick with
appreciate
facts.
that.
They're stubborn.
Yeah,
They outlast all the rhetoric. That's one of the great
yeah,
things about facts. And
yeah,
you've been a man of fact and a man of God both. So, where you know firsthand. So, Representative, I want to thank you. I'm looking forward to having you back on the show regularly. We're gonna have these conversations. I think maybe we should take this podcast on the road and go talk to some people in the real world and maybe do some town halls. I think it'd be pretty fun.
let's do it,
I would
John. Let's
love that.
do it.
I think I just heard a kernel of
A
an
former
idea when we were
legislator and
talking.
a journalist.
Well,
John, your listeners can always tune in me on my or follow me on my
yes,
social
tell
media,
everybody
Rep
again
Vernon
how we
Jones,
follow
and
you and all
so
the ambitious things you're going to do next.
just Rep Vernon Jones. And of course, I'll be in D.C. this weekend.
You're going
I'll
to the
be one of the
rally,
guest
right?
speakers at the
Yeah,
march. Yeah, I was honored to be asked to be one of the guest speakers on Saturday starting at
sure.
noon. I think they're going from Freedom Plaza to the Supreme Court. It's important because, the Constitution, freedom of speech is for the minority too. I always tell people the freedom of speech is not for the
Right.
majority. It's really set there for the minority. So regardless of how you feel, you should be able to express your opinion. And when you see uh, peaceful demonstrations by that's coming up for Stop the Steal.
Right.
I just hope that people understand and come out and be mindful that we're just executing our constitutional rights.
Yeah, so
There's no
important.
violence. There's no intent to do anything else other than express our feelings and dissatisfaction with the way this election has gone. Not because our person did not win, it's because we feel that the process, there was enough election fraud. That's what we were
Right.
concerned about, and that's what we're protesting about. And no election should be stolen for anybody, Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, no, that's at the heart of our great constitutional republic. I think everyone would
Yeah,
agree on that. Once we get past these moments, we're going to look back and dig
yeah,
into this and find out what really happened. So, well,
yeah,
sir, it's an
yeah.
honor as always, and we'll look forward to seeing you in D.C. later this week and have you back on the show soon.
Thank you, John.
You
Peace
too.
out.
God bless you, sir.